You are here because you have a property that exists within one of the three HARB districts. That's South Wayne, North Wayne, and Luella Court. If you have a project that is increasing a footprint or changing a massing, such as enclosing something, adding gables or dormers, or an addition, then those are things that we review. So we appreciate you all coming. We have four projects tonight. First, we have to call to order, and we have to have a pledge of allegiance. So please rise. We start. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, our first project tonight is HARB 2013-20. It's 500 St. David's Avenue. Master suite addition, renovation of master bath, add a walk-in closet, and all of this is being built above an existing space, which is a family room. Is someone here to present that tonight? Can you please come to the podium? And the way this works, I don't know if you've been here before,
No.
but you need to speak into a microphone.
Okay.
And if you're moving around, we have handheld mics that we can give you. Anything that you're presenting on the table will be shown up there, so you kind of have to check and see if you're in the right spot for that.
Okay.
We usually like to have you introduce yourself and tell us who you are, what the address is again, and then maybe start with the site plan and orient us to how this is all being done.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
My name is Jane Till. I am the homeowner at 500 St. David's Road, and we are proposing an addition, which is actually building on existing building underneath. So it was a one-story building that we think was put on in the 1940s, and we want to put a second story on top of that. So do you want me to go through the...
Usually it's helpful to go through the site plan and then pictures,
Okay.
and then you can walk us through how the plan works.
Sure.
And really, we're only here to review exterior modifications, so anything interior is beyond our
Right.
review and our scope, so I wouldn't get into any of that, but just talk about the shape, the massing, the materials, and anything like that that you think is important.
Sure.
Thank you.
So in the site plan, you can see that we do have an existing addition that is sort of off the side of the house, off the back of the house. You cannot see it from the road. Some of our neighbors probably can see it through the trees, especially in the wintertime, but other than that, I don't think the general public would be able to see that room or the addition. So drawing your attention to the front elevation, this would be seen from the, from the back of the house. And if you look at the photographs, I gave you 3 sheets of photographs. So as you're standing on the road, on St. David's Road, St. David's Avenue Road, you can see the front of our house, and the garage is off to the left. As you get closer, as you're walking closer to the house, this is the kitchen. You still can't see the family room. But as you stand right before the entry to the side door, you can see the addition would be kind of peeking out there. So that's where we're proposing to build. And then I took another photograph from the deck, so you can see the existing room, the one-story room. So on page 2, these photographs were taken from the backyard, showing the back of the house. This photograph here, again, shows a different view of that one-story room. And then the last sheet again shows how kind of it's hidden. So this is taken from my neighbor's property, trying to look through to see the property, all of these. Let's see, this one here is probably the one neighbor that would be able to see the addition, which is on Orchard Way. So they, especially during the winter, would be able to view the addition. So as I mentioned in my notes here, we're going to continue using the CertainTeed roof, which is a high quality product, along with the copper gutters. And there is a nice architectural feature which may be structural. Originally, if this was put on the 40s, but we're going to take these underneath the roof. We're going to take this detail and replicate that so that it's consistent throughout the house.
Are those the brackets?
Yeah, the brackets, yeah. So actually, no one who came over we were not even sure if the addition in the 1940s, if it was structural or not, or whether they were just sort of replicating what was already there. But it's a beautiful home. It was built in 1895. I did a lot of research. I went to the historical committee to find out what I could find, and I wasn't able to find who the architect was. Or really any information. There was no information about any work done on the house or additions, except in 2007, we did renovate the kitchen, and at that time, I believe your board was not here. And I will say that we did, let's see, I don't know if you can see it in any of these. We did replicate the windows. We used divided light because it faced the front of the house, and we used a good product with the Pella Architect series at that time because it was double hung windows, and we felt it was important to be consistent and follow that design, especially since it was the front of the house. So that was an addition that was done without your approval, and I think you'd be pleased to know that we used all the products, and I think it really is seamless in terms of whether people would know it was an addition or it wasn't an addition, whether it was a renovation or not. So that's our proposal. And do you have any questions?
Can you just walk us through the drawing elevations
Sure.
of the proposed? And if you can kind of put them side by side a little bit.
So, well, we have the partial front elevation. Again, you can see the roof line. We have 3 windows up there that will be Pella. And I'll draw your attention to the overall rear elevation. One of the things, you can see this sort of turret. It's a beautiful feature in the back of the house. It's just a shame you can't see from the front. But you can see how the roof is sort of cut out there. And that was done so that we didn't have to actually kind of mess with the existing roof line. And so that we can leave that alone and leave those gutters and have this outdoor space, which is this little deck here. So that it sort of is a nice way of combining the 2 roofs instead of it sort of merging into the turret. We're leaving that standalone and have this where it wouldn't actually have a roof hanging over the entire balcony that's being created there. The railing that we're going to use is actually going to be a match for what we have over on our porch on the left here. You can see that we have a nice wraparound porch. So it's sort of a white railing with nice details, and we actually were able to find a similar product with some detail for the railing in the back. And the rear elevation, you can see that how that roof is going to work with the turret. And then there's some details on the final page on A4, which shows some of the more structural issues that would be going on with the renovation.
Is this whole house a shingle There's no clapper?
It's actually, the left side of the house that you're looking at is all cedar shake, but actually on the right side of the house is stone.
So any of the siding material, first floor or second floor, is all in, it's a shingle material? It's not a siding, like a strip siding, you know, a plank siding? It's more like a cedar
It's a
shingle?
cedar shake, yeah.
Okay, so that's, the proposal is to do all of that and all the new work?
Correct.
To
The new
match.
work will replicate that.
Okay.
And the overall roof system, I see it's complex, but it's hipped for the most part?
Yes.
And that the new addition is also
Has
hipped?
a hip as well.
Are all the existing second floor windows just a single sash, 1-over-1 arrangement, or are they
They're
multiple?
going, we're going to do casement because the windows below are casement.
Will they be divided like the lower ones, or?
We're actually planning to replace those divided light. It makes the room very dark, and it's in the back of the house, so actually part of the addition would be to replace those with clear glass. There's actually a really neat screen system on the inside, which is almost sort of like a cottage style, so there is a rail across. So we're going to leave that and then do the clear glass. Again, if it was the front of the house, I think I would have, you know, possibly done divided light, but if you look at the back of the house, if you look at some of the photographs here, you'll see that all the second-story windows on page 2 upstairs are all, there's no divided light up there. It's all clear glass.
I couldn't, that's what I was asking.
It
I
was
couldn't really
hard.
tell, but the drawing showed them with nothing, and not even a middle rail for a 2-sash.
Right, that's because it's casement.
So you're going to change everything to casements?
Yeah,
that
the
is
second
shown?
floor, the second floor will
Okay.
be casement. The first floor below is casement, so we thought we would follow and do casement on that, since it's sort of a separate unit, to follow that design and do casement on the second floor.
And the turret, I know the turret's not being affected, but right now is 1-over-1?
Yes, they
Okay.
are double hung in
But
the,
it's-
that's the master bedroom, and they are double hung. We thought about doing double hung, but I'm planning on using some existing stained glass that's there, and so I found this guy who can actually take that stained glass, and he's going to replicate the design and do a panel, and we're going to hang it in front of the casement window. So rather than you know, sort of waste that. That's why I wanted the casement, was so that we can use those panels and make, and reuse that glass that we're taking down.
Sounds nice.
I think it looks like a nice project, you know, especially since it's in the back of the house. We don't really have any say over the windows, but they won't be visible from the street.
No.
It looks like you're using really nice materials, and the scale looks as though it's fitting with the house and with the neighborhood,
Thank you.
so.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. It's been a process.
I like that you're extending the 1-story, which didn't probably feel as appropriate to its 2-story, but not as tall as the existing, so it's a nice
Okay, yeah.
gradation.
I didn't think of that, but yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I like how you modify the roof so that you wouldn't impact the existing turret in the back, because that's really a nice feature. It really
Yeah,
looks
I think
nice,
it's going to be nice to have the balcony, too.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a great project. I do have one question, has nothing to do with your project. but
Okay.
That chimney, I was really curious about it, in front of that window.
The chimney in front of the window, yeah, it's.
Must be a New York
it's-
City view.
Yeah, it actually comes out, the window is, there's really no window there. I
Oh,
don't
there
know
isn't?
what that.
It looks like a window.
It does look like a window.
Is it,
Interesting.
But it must be a fake window because there's nothing in the house that looks out at that chimney.
Thankfully.
Yeah,
Well, there's too much,
I never actually thought about that, but there's nothing in the house, so
Maybe
it
it's a-
must have
a
just
vent
been.
Or vent of some kind or something?
Yeah, yes, there's an attic fan, you're right.
Maybe that's it.
There's a little room with an attic fan, and that's what it is. You're right.
look like shutters.
Yeah, that's an original chimney, too.
It would be because there's actually only one fireplace in the house, which surprises me, and and that is actually the venting for the living room fireplace.
Okay.
Well, you got all those trees and shrubs, so it's nice to block some of that nature. You get too much nature, so, you know.
Right.
All right.
But I think they were so proud back in 1895 that they didn't need fireplaces, that they had this heat, that they were heating the house, that it wasn't a selling point to have fireplaces.
That's
So they
true.
just had this one fireplace, where today we would love,
Right.
we would love to have more.
So true.
Anybody else?
No.
You good? Is there any public comment on this project or this particular, everything that she just said?
Are you good?
Okay. Make a motion?
Motion to recommend approval of the COA?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0. You approve?
Well, that's great. I didn't know I'd get a vote tonight, so
Well,
that's great.
the process is that we approve or disapprove or have conditions. We've approved.
Okay.
It now goes to the Board of Commissioners, and they either agree with us or disagree.
Okay.
Or have conditions. Typically, they do agree with us, but, you never know. So technically, until they give the approval, you don't have really approval.
Okay.
And then you get a letter that you need to come in and sign that says, I agree that everybody agrees that this is right. And then you can then go through the next process.
Okay.
And that's, the Board of Commissioners is 14th of October. So
Okay.
tune in for that.
Okay.
And you
Great.
don't need to be at that meeting.
All right. So I'll
It's-
just get the letter.
It's part of their agenda. You can watch it, you can come if you want, but basically, they go through the items and say yes, no, yes, and at that point, the letter is generated after that meeting.
Okay.
That's the process.
Great.
All right, thank you
Okay.
for presenting.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much. I think it's great you're doing this, by the way.
Thank you. All right, next on the agenda, we have HARB 2013-21, is 301 St. David's Road. Replacement of a structurally unsound, non-conforming garage with a new three-car garage. In addition, minor modifications to the house, such as enclosing the side porch, improving the roof line, and relocating several windows. And the presenter is?
I'm Richard Buchanan from Archer and Buchanan Architecture in Westchester. We're the architect for Doug and Susie Yearley, the new owners of this house. I'll now silence my cell phone. So Doug and Susie have bought this lovely house and are embarking on various renovations to the house, including modest alterations to the exterior, including the addition of a new wood roof. It presently has a asphalt shingle roof, so we'd like to see it get a wood roof. The window in the middle here actually is going away in favor of a slight reorganization of the other two windows to make sense out of the master bedroom and bath. And then the the broader issue is the addition of a replacement of the existing two-car garage with a three-car garage. Here there's a new two-story garage that'll be 3 cars downstairs and a sport court upstairs. And it's over the existing footprint, so there's no increase of impervious coverage or very modest alteration to impervious coverage. And the placement of the garage is very tightly constrained between riparian setback for accessory structure, rear yard setback for accessory structure, the location of the pool, which exists, and of course the side yard setback. So we're very tightly constrained in where we can be with the garage, and it's served by the existing driveway, and so it's all very logical. We have two SketchUp perspectives of the proposed garage. As you see, the house is very much a Dutch colonial gambrel in the sort of Wayne Victorian theme of lovely old gambrels, and so we've carried forward that same theme, and in creating that form, because that is the only form of roof on the property of the existing house, there are no other little bits. Otherwise, it gave us a nice opportunity to create a sport court on the upper floor for the kids.
Smart.
Keep them from playing in the driveway next to St. Catherine's there. It's a very busy road. On this sheet, other context images up and down the street, keyed to the plan here. But I'll draw your attention primarily to the existing garage, which has, well, that's the neighboring garage to the north. Here's your existing garage over here. Mighty thing that it is. And the existing garage is in a state of collapse with a temporary partition down the middle, so it's in tough shape. So the first order of business was to demolish that garage regardless, and that's that. If you'd like, I can point out some other things on CAD drawings, but I'm not sure that it's not already well illustrated by the perspective.
The back end of the house, that's along Aberdeen and closest to the garage, was that added at some point? Because I noticed the foundation is stucco, the rest of the house is a stone foundation.
Correct. Yeah, that's about a 20-year-old addition on there that Mr. Rooney built years ago.
And was the garage built at that same time
No,
also?
the existing garage was probably original to the 1903 construction of the house.
We actually reviewed this for that porch
Mm-hmm.
several years back.
Oh, with the turret.
The turret, yeah.
So we're
right.
pretty familiar with it. I had two requests, if possible. One is on the site plan. Would it be possible for you to somehow show us the footprint of the existing garage in comparison to the new garage?
Oh, no, there is, no. Let's go overlay it.
That's a good point.
There you go.
Okay. And then there's a side photograph, I believe, the Aberdeen elevation, which shows the porch you're enclosing. Maybe you can kind of describe, actually not the proposed one, but the actual side elevation that's there now, existing.
Yeah, okay.
Is that G? Okay. And if you could kind of point and talk about what's being filled in and how big it's, what's happening there.
Down here, this is the photograph of existing conditions, and there's a door into the family entry here with a path out to Aberdeen, which lands you out on the sidewalk, but given the front door around the corner on St. David's, and then the prevalence of using the family entry at the garage, we felt that this porch was an opportunity to make sense out of their mudroom. So they'll come from down below and come up from the garage area, which presently it does not do. Will come up internally, and it made this entrance moot. There's no use for it now. So with just the slightest expansion of footprint, actually on this drawing, you can see that the surface of the wall there is flush, and that brings us out to the bottom tread of this step right here. So in terms of impervious coverage and footprint of the building, it has not changed. But in doing that, we would actually overframe to simplify that roof structure so that it doesn't get too low and squashy there. In doing that, it just makes that a little bit simpler and makes it more part of the building mass, because we don't want it to read as a filled-in entrance. So.
And the last part of that photograph is the window
Yes.
that's furthest down towards the existing garage.
Correct.
Looks like it's indented with an eyebrow or something and a,
Right.
what's going on there now?
That, what's going on right there, well, there's a very strange condition where there's a stair that comes in and goes down to the basement only. And so there's a sort of mid-level sill covering that stair that brings light into the family room beyond. But they brought the window halfway in so that it,
So it's a reverse,
didn't-
it's a reverse bay, sort of?
right, yeah, it's curious. With our stair coming up there, we'll push that back out to the surface, and we can, there we just go to a more regular facade.
Was there any reason, this is only for my own information, was there any reason why you never connected the garage physically to the house, so that you don't have to go outside to?
We explored in detail a bunch of different options there, and actually Kevin Kuchansky was very helpful here at Radnor in really helping us navigate, we're in sort of this delicate matrix of building setbacks, riparian buffers, impervious coverage, all those sorts of things. We're actually in great shape for impervious coverage, which is sort of a miracle. But what we found was the most efficient use of the resource was to actually keep it as a separate building, so that we, greater than 10 feet away from the existing structure, so that we could then use the accessory structure setbacks, which were defined both by riparian buffer and, because there's a little culvert there, and by the building setback. In doing that, we were then able to get away from the pool, because otherwise we started to crowd the pool. So it actually balanced out a bunch of different issues. And it created, I think, a little bit more of a typical old town condition where the outbuilding is
Exactly.
detached.
I was going to say, detached garages were the pattern. and
Yeah,
You're
so
prone
I
to
think
that.
it's very nice.
I do too.
And the Yearleys, I think, were very on board with, that's why they bought a house in town. They wanted
Right.
that kind of experience,
Right.
so.
Just to make sure I understand, but I think I do, the window that you're replacing on photograph G, that is that oddball, yeah. It's within the portion of the building that was not the original to begin with.
No, this was added
Right.
by Sean Rooney.
Okay, just to keep that, so it's not changing an original core, it's
No,
it's changing a change.
it's changing a
I
change.
remember when they did this.
Changing a quirky
Yeah,
change.
he did that
Yes.
the last
I remember
thing or
when he
before
did
that?
What was that?
Was that part of the last
No,
one that
this-
he came through?
This preceded the
No,
turret.
That was another one.
Like about 20 years ago. I do remember.
didn't remember it, that's
Doing
all
all
I
the
was asking.
construction.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I have to say, it's a beautiful garage.
We aim to please.
I do have a question. I think it's a bit out of scale in height. Now, you're doing some calculations with allowable heights, mean roof heights and so forth.
Yep.
Maybe Ray can weigh in on how that's done, or maybe he doesn't want to. That's Kachansky's deal? That's ours. You're not going to talk about it? Okay. An accessory building is allowed 20-foot height. It's a mean height. It's calculated a whole bunch of ways. This building is probably another 10 feet taller than that, which is,
7.5.
almost getting into what a residence height is. Now, we don't have anything to say about code. I'm just looking at you drew a piece on the site plan that showed the original footprint, which is about half the size. Maybe it's a little bit.
Closer to two-thirds, because it was really a two-car garage, we're going to a
Okay.
three-car.
And then we get a view of these things together in G3. And the grade's working in your direction because you're going down towards the stream.
Right.
So you are dropping, but I just don't know if it's enough. It looks a little out of scale. When typically the development pattern was to have the big house, smaller garage as a separate building, maybe another outbuilding. That was kind of the development pattern. This house has had at least 2 additions we know of,
Sure.
and has grown and it's expanded in its own right. And you guys are going to do this piece, while in footprint, I think you can probably get away with it because the land is a big piece, it's a corner lot. The height, to me, is a little bit pushing what I feel is the right scale for this. I don't know about anybody else. And if you look at the section, which is on G2, you can kind of get the scale of a person in the sport court, which I understand why you want a sport court. You need height for that and all that, but it's a big building.
I will actually draw your attention to this drawing here, comparing the section to the end of the house. We really did just try and reflect the pattern of that, and it does create a big volume. What we used as our limiting factor was the rules regarding max height. So we've got our 20-foot max height to mean roof, and the gambrel roof gives us a little bit of a gimme there. So I'll tell you, I think that this does push the boundaries of what that is, but I think it is consistent with the character of the building that it's built for, and conceivably a hayloft of the carriage house when they kept horses here. And it may be that the Yearleys will want to keep horses here. Big turnout.
You got an acre? I understand what you're saying. I mean, the gambrel's there, all the pieces of the puzzle are there.
Yeah.
I think you've got too much height, though, in my opinion.
I think
And one of
that-
the things that we've talked about before is that there's zoning which mandates a certain height, footprint and setback and so forth. And then there's whatever happens beyond zoning. And if you're in the historic district, that's kind of our world. So in zoning, this may be what you can do. And what we look at is what's appropriate within that. And I don't know how anybody else feels. Nobody else has said anything yet, but to me, I feel like it's a little bit tall. It's a beautiful building. Don't get me wrong. Everything you're doing is great, but I just think it's too massive for the scale of this when you put it next to the house. That's my thought. Anybody else?
Well, I mean, I thought it was, I understand your thing about the scale, and that kind of piqued my interest also. But if you look at G3, and it is large by itself, but if you look at G3, and you're seeing it next to the full size of the house, I think it's a judgment call. It's like right on the border of being too big or just under too big. And on the other side of the coin is the owners want that space for a sport court rather than just having an attic above the garage. What are you going to do with this other than put stuff up there? Here they're actually wanting something to be used on an active basis, and you need a higher ceiling if you're throwing a basketball or whatever you're doing in that. So it's kind of almost like adaptive new use. That might be the right word?
I'm just going to, in my head, preservation head, to my mind, this is a rehabilitation of the site, not a restoration or a preservation. I mean, it's all of those things. And therefore, some of the changes we're talking about feel more appropriate in a rehabilitation, getting a new use in the amongst the uses existing, so I'm kind of okay. But I hear what Kim's saying, but I'm okay.
I just wanted to give one perspective that we're from out of the area. We bought the Rooney house in June, and we love the home. We're working with Richard and Ed Mahoney to do what we think are some great renovations, including next week the cedar roof starts, which I think will transform this ugly green roof that's now on it. One thing we didn't realize from being out of the area is how busy Aberdeen is and how busy St. Catharines is. And we have a 7 and 8-year-old. And playing in our driveway with Aberdeen right there, we've learned is a problem, and it scares us, and we don't like the kids there, and we can't see them. And the stories you hear today, it's just has not been a good situation. So when we got together with Richard, one thing we decided was, boy, if we could have some play area, sport court type area that was safe above the garage, because this house does not have a big basement. It has a big basement, doesn't have a high basement. So what drove the decision to build this way was primarily to get our kids off the driveway and get them into a safe environment where they can throw the basketball around, kick the soccer ball, flick the hockey stick, puck and all that. So that's just our background. And we told Richard we wanted this carriage house to match perfectly with the architecture of the Dutch colonial, and so that's what he tried to do. Thank you.
The other thing is, I think that rendering shows the garage better than the elevation, because the elevation does make it look high, but when you're really looking at it, I don't think that it will appear that massive. I mean, it is a big building, but I really think it goes well with the house, and I think that once it's there, people won't notice that it's terribly big, because in the area there's so many large buildings, and then St. Catharines is right across the street, and even though that's not a contributing building, it still is very massive in scale, and so I feel like that'll be, that will fit into the scale of the area and the house and the property.
I mean, one of the things that does help you is that a gambrel
Sort
kind
of
of makes
dives
your
away
eye
from
line,
Yes.
you only catch that first knuckle,
Yeah.
and the rest of it goes away when you're on the ground.
And
So the elevation is kind of
well, and
not true.
critical to that thinking, the Earleys asked us to really explore lots of alternatives in this before coming to you with a design. And one of the issues that we really felt strongly was about keeping the subordinate building parallel to the road rather than turned perpendicular. There's a big presence of this house, gables in every direction, because it wants to have that presence. If we're going to use the gambrel as a subordinate building, we felt strongly that parallel to the road does give you that diving away effect of the high ridge.
Good point.
Yeah, I was looking at the existing garage, and you really have a big dip where the existing garage is. I was surprised how far, it's got to be a couple of feet, at least.
Yeah.
I was really surprised about that.
Yeah, to Beverly's point, there are other large structures in that neighborhood, so it's probably not as glaring as it might otherwise be. Regarding historical aspects of the property, what are we losing here? We have an existing garage that, in my opinion, doesn't add a lot to the historical significance of the property. So by that tear down, I'm not terribly concerned. It's being replaced with a structure that's in tune with the existing building. Yeah, it is on the big side, but I think because of the location of the property, it's not as problematic as it might otherwise be.
Well, I think the question of the old garage really is it really in such bad shape that it needs to be torn down?
Oh, yes.
Because, when we were looking at the garage on Luella Court, that was one of the issues, that the condition of the garage.
I guess
So I think that to be consistent with what we are, espousing, I think that if it really is in terrible condition and it can't be saved, then I don't think that's a problem. If it can be saved, that's another problem, another question, but, so really, that's
In your packet there's a letter from the builder
Yeah, I saw that.
identifying that.
Yeah.
Well, most people come before us, and they do a lot of interior modifications to make these homes fit today's. This is the first one I've seen where they've done this to the garage. It's something, you see something, no, I mean, as far as the sport area up above, that's what I'm talking about.
Oh.
I don't mean the garage itself.
Oh, I see.
This, yeah, because normally it says unfinished space that you see.
Or, yeah,
Or
or an
a
apartment
suite
or
or
something.
something.
I think it's a nice project.
Mhm.
Given the area and given the architecture, I think it fits in well,
It's a nice house.
yeah.
Always liked that house.
Good adaptive reuse.
Thank you.
Make a motion, everybody?
Motion to recommend approval of a COA.
Any seconds?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? 1. Sorry.
Okay.
So you've been approved, 4-1.
I appreciate it.
And you know the drill.
Yep.
Thank you for, it's going to be beautiful, but I just have my reservations a little bit, that's all.
Absolutely understood.
Welcome,
very much.
welcome to the neighborhood, and thanks for fixing it up like you are. Terrific.
You'll probably be back in another year and a half with another renovation, right?
I think it's a great idea.
We're done.
Thanks so much.
We'll keep you a chair warm out here. All right. We have the third project of tonight's schedule. HARB 2013-22, 225 Radnor Street Road. Infill addition on first floor, expand and renovate kitchen area. Can you introduce yourselves? And
I'm Mark Stanish of Michael Visick Architects. This project is at 225 Radnor Street Road. You can see on the site plan, it's kind of odd. If you look at the front elevation of the house, the garage is really almost buried on the lot. This addition is really just infilling a porch / deck that had been removed before. It will be completely invisible from the front of the house. We have pictures as required of the area, different houses in the area, but it's basically a fairly straightforward stucco colonial house. And years ago, I don't know when, this is Bob Henderson, when that addition was built, before the Hendersons moved in.
Probably the initial addition was built back in the 30s or 40s, and then there was some other work that's been done by various occupants over the years. But it's been added to almost from its inception. And Cam, I think you've been down to visit us some years ago.
yeah, a bunch of years ago, I remember. That is the bigger brother of my house.
Yes.
So I've always said, oh yeah, I should have a bigger one, but
Oh, Bob's not on the mic.
sorry.
What we're doing here is, you can see in the photograph of the rear elevation, there's a two-story addition that was built, as Bob said, in the 30s or 40s. The back of the addition was always infilled. The front was a porch on the second floor, and right now on the first floor, there's these very tall columns. There used to be some sort of decking across there that had been rotted away and just never replaced. What we propose to do is fill that in there. To the left of that is where you see a lot of windows, is currently the breakfast room. And it's always bothered Bob that the peak of that roof and the peak of the side porch roof didn't meet. So it was decided while we were doing all this to just rip this roof off, pretty much replace it. It cantilevers over the foundation, in a very minor way to make the kitchen a little bit bigger. But also, we're going to follow all the details of the existing side porch, all the soffit details and barge board details, as well as the soffit line and the peak of the roof. The roof will be a little bit of a different slope. And none of this, you can see, really adds to the footprint of the house, because this covered the footprint of the house. The next page on A1 is what the existing house looks like you can see, again, that we're just really adding to the back of the house. You can see on the existing side elevation, the kind of blankness that's there. Again, the plans, I know you said don't have anything to do with the interiors, but you can see we're just taking a room and pushing it out. And if you've read the letter that accompanied this, you'd know that Bob's wife is handicapped and has been for a number of years, and the house has just gotten to the point where she can't maneuver at all around there. So we're trying to squeeze in some extra space for him to be able to maneuver the wheelchair around and get a room in the back so that she can start to enjoy her yard again.
Yeah, we never got a letter.
Pardon?
We never received a letter with our package.
There was a letter, I'm sorry if you didn't get it, there was a letter attached to the back of the application. You know, it said, with an explanation of why we were doing it, so. Or, kind of the history of the project. So you can see on the back of the house, again, we were trying to keep that sort of porch-like look, so we just used a series of columns, double-hung windows. We're using larger panes than the house has because frankly, we wanted more openness, so that the room really was more in the exterior, looked more towards the exterior and had more light coming in. The proportions of the panes are similar. We use panels underneath. Also, on the site plan, I think you could see, but on some of the drawings, you'd see there's a huge tree almost next to this addition. I think it's like 5 or 6 feet away. So we also didn't want to we wanted to have the absolute minimal disturbance to this tree, so we're not even adding any additional foundations or anything. That's why the bottom has sort of the hog fencing on it. The site also has accessibility issues where there's no room to get any equipment in here or anything. So we tried to have the most minimal addition that we could do that gave them the most amount of space.
Yeah, how do you get to that?
And then the last page was just, per the request, walking around the neighborhood, taking pictures. And Mr. Lacy, the neighborhood, obviously, there's not really a consistent architecture there. So there's a whole variety. So it's not as, we're just trying to kind of stay in keeping with the house. And as I said, I don't even think the neighbors will really be able to see this very much the way the houses are oriented, so.
No, I think this is an improvement to what you have there for sure. I mean, it's that kind of open void has always been sort of a useless space, I would imagine. And now you're going to actually have great use out of it. And you're taking, that glass line all the way around and maintaining a whole bunch of the details. I mean, it's a 1920s house, 30s, 40s, 2013.
Right.
And, you're being consistent and only making it better. It is a tight site, but it's all in the back.
Right.
I don't know how you're going to get there. You must have good neighbors that'll let you through. But, I think it's going to be a great improvement to what you have there.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Sir, you good?
Motion to recommend approval of a COA?
Second?
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And you know the drill as well, right? Okay. All right. Next, we have some old business. HARB 2013-7A, 311 North Wayne Avenue. Removal of rear deck and replace with patio and screen porch. Also to install bilco doors on the side of the dwelling to serve as a means of egress from the basement.
Good evening. How are you all tonight?
Good.
This is a house that we've already been in front of you for. The new owners would like to do a slight variation on the back of the house. Originally, this screened-in porch that is right here was going to be a deck of the same size, and what they are looking to do is instead of using a deck, do a raised flagstone patio, and then do a screened-in porch with a short sloped roof like this. And then the bilco doors If you are looking down, this is the back of the house here. There's the bump out here. There's also a bump out that's right here that's not shown. And the bilco doors would be kind of placed in here. Currently, the basement has only access through the house through an extremely narrow staircase. And just for an egress point, we were going to use a low bilco door.
I guess, can we back up 1 second?
Yes.
And in our packet, we had a plan that was the previous approved plan.
Would you like me to get that?
Yeah, and if we could just put them side by side to see what kind of changes we are talking about.
Would you like to see just a basement or the footprint?
I think the first floor, and if we could put them side by side, the originally approved and the new proposed. Let's start with that. So it looks like there's a porch that stays the same, a covered porch.
Yes, this covered porch was going to be was going to also be a deck. So we're just taking this whole area. We were going back and forth, not sure if this was going to be a raised patio and a covered porch entrance or a deck. Currently, it's a deck. It was, I should say, excuse me. And then this was going to, I'm sorry. Oh, I apologize. I only have, can I use your
Let's see
copy?
if I have.
Sorry.
Yeah, I only have that. Is that all you have? Well, let's use, do you have this one? I don't. Why don't you use that one? And maybe we can go to the elevations and put the elevations side by side. So that's the approved plan, or approved set of elevations. That's in the larger scale.
Okay, so this was what was approved with, in the original plan. Going to this here, we would just be enclosing, this doesn't show that the deck that was existing.
So it looks like you're taking a second floor piece out of this puzzle as well?
You want to see the picture?
Yeah, maybe you can describe what's being removed on that one, or what has been removed.
Well, what had happened is, in here, we had a lot of unsafe framing. When we originally had come in, we were going to be taking this section off, carrying this back part out, and fixing this flat roof and this roof angle. What we had done is, we had taken apart some of this framing, spoken with both Ray Daly and Kevin Kachansky about some unsafe, there had been some additions, as we talked about at the previous time. So we took the house all the way down to the foundation to get a good beginning starting point. At that point, we had an old brick foundation that was disintegrated. Once again, brought Kevin and Ray Daly out to the site and have since are working on repouring a new foundation and framing everything back up to match the new plan, the plan that has been approved already. In doing that, the potential homeowners had asked about doing this a screened-in porch, and that's what brings us here today. So this deck here originally was going to stay, this doorway entrance here was going to be on the new part once we had reframed this area here. So instead of using the deck, we removed the deck and would like to do a poured raised patio here, flagstone, and do a screened-in porch here, carrying almost that same roof across that we had approved here.
I'm just to get myself oriented.
Yes, sir. Oh, sorry, is this
See the rear elevation of the approved drawing?
here, sir?
That's right. If I recall, the end of the addition that's on the right-hand side, you were going to take that back, let me see.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's right. I think you were going to take that back a little bit and then bring the other side forward.
We were going to carry this plane across and redo this roof
Right,
to eliminate the flat roof.
right. And I think you were taking some of that back about a couple of feet or so.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm just trying to remember
Absolutely, yes,
what
sir.
you were here.
Well, I'm just comparing the two right side elevations, and it looks like you're not going back as far in the second floor as you were.
No, sir. What we have done is instead, in this, originally we had come in front of you with a proposed addition to kind of fix the back of the house. What we decided to do is use and stay within the existing foundation. I'm sorry, I should have pointed that out. I apologize. We decided to use the existing size of the house and not do a further addition. So the old house ended here, and that's where this house
that
ends
line.
now.
Okay.
I'm sorry, and that is.
Yeah, I mean, I
understand
could
why.
see that line, I wasn't sure. so.
I apologize. I understand why that was a little confusing. So what we've done is we've used the existing footprint that's there, unfortunately had to remove all of this. We are pouring a new foundation. This is where the new bilco door will be placed. That bilco door is actually essentially here. We are not doing this addition here at all. So the end of the house will still be at this point.
So that's kind of, it's best, well, it's probably that's probably a later addition as well, right? I mean,
Yes. This back part was actually 3 different additions.
Okay.
And that was when we ran into problems with, they had built off of just a dirt slab and some old just dry stacked brick foundation. That's when we got down to the first floor deck and started taking this apart. That's when we realized that the foundation under that area had several problems. As I said, I brought out Ray Daly and Kevin Kachansky to go through this, and came to the point where we're pouring.
I like the fact, number one, that you're not going as far back with a 2-story piece.
Yes, sir.
I think that's, you're kind of going back to what the latest and greatest addition was. And taking that other bump out that's in the picture, which is kind of the silo thing, that's,
Here?
well, I'm looking at the photograph below your,
Oh, here?
that piece disappears even though there's,
The old mobile home?
yeah, whatever that is. So you're not going back as far, the massing is going to be less, and then you're going to, instead of doing a deck, it's essentially a raised terrace that has a porch on top of it with an open porch that goes to a back door. And that's, if you can move the photograph, we can go back to that one, okay? So you're minimizing the 2-story massing, and you're adding a 1-story massing, which actually softens that whole back area. So I kind of like that as far as the whole process of, how this thing is coming together. I think it's, between that and the deck, either one, it's in the back. It's a usable space, it's adaptive reuse. You're not building something totally different. You're rebuilding what was there, but less.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think this thing was, in the approved plan, I think it was getting a little long for the scale of the original house.
Yes.
So I think it's improvement, it's an improvement going that direction. And then instead of having a 2-story wall at the back door, you've got a 1-story that's, a screen porch is kind of inside, outside, very, very light. It's not another hard surface. And the bilco it's a code issue. It is less than 2 feet tall, in the bushes, kind of. I don't think that has any impact whatsoever.
I just wanted to make sure that we brought it up because it was
No, it's
something
good.
new.
Yeah,
And
it's
it was,
new,
and it was on
exactly.
it was on the left side on the, right side elevation. I just wanted to bring
Yeah.
it to the attention.
Now, on the, it appears there's been a lot more demolition than maybe what we originally thought there would be. Can you talk about that a little more? I think you mentioned the foundation, but.
Yes, sir. What we had done originally is we were going to match, we were just going to continue the stucco along the entire house was a stucco over the original clapboard siding. And when we were removing essentially this piece here to start taking it apart, we realized that, we were almost halfway through the entire house. And there was, all kinds of different levels. We just went ahead and continued to remove the stucco. Unfortunately, the clapboard was so damaged from the stucco being nailed to it, there was nothing that we could really do to it. And we are going to use the cedar impressions siding on the house.
But
So you're going to replicate what was there?
Yeah.
Is that what you're trying to, so it's not going to be a stucco house now?
No, sir.
It's going to be
We're removing-
sided looking?
yes.
Okay. It's like hardy, is it like a composite material?
It's a vinyl cedar siding, or vinyl, it's called Cedar Impressions. It's a certain tea product. I believe they're using a 7 Perfections, which is where it's each row is in line. It's not a staggered finish. It's not a rough finish. It's more of a flatter finish.
Okay.
But what we found underneath here, we had clapboard, and then these parts were cedar, original cedar, and there was some half-round cedar in the gables. We also eliminated that window, which we had left there, that was also an add-on that was, very low in the, so.
So this is going to be clapboard, kind of a shingle and a half round, and some,
What we're gonna do is
I mean,
we're gonna do.
it's not part of this, I mean, this is not what we're talking about. It's just interesting that you've made this decision to do this. So maybe we should get this part out of the
That's a good
way.
point.
And then can you hang for a sec?
Absolutely,
after
sir.
The things that we're talking about tonight are the substitution from a deck and moving towards a porch addition, and the bilco door.
I just
And
want to,
what are the effects do we feel that has?
I was just going to agree with Cam and others that porch is more appropriate to the age of the neighborhood. Decks feel, in my head, in general, post that period, so this is a nice bringing back the feel
Yeah,
in a good way.
I agree. So any comments else on that? So we should vote on that, and then if you can hang for a sec, we'd like to hear your stories.
Absolutely.
Any motion?
All right,
All right,
motion,
Actually, any public comment on these two items?
Mr. Chairman, I have one. The bilco door issue should be a non-issue. Bilco
Good.
doors are not addressed by HARB and never, so I don't want to start something tonight and then have somebody say, well, you addressed it at another meeting, so you need to address it now. So if you could strike that or take that off of your consideration, I'd appreciate that.
Okay, all right, that makes sense.
public comment.
So do we have public comment on this? Okay, so it's only on the rear. So we're really just talking about the substitution of the deck going to an enclosed porch. And
The
reducing
revision, the reduction of the
Yeah, reduction of the,
As per the drawings
Yeah.
submitted to us.
revised plans.
so drawings as submitted, how do we feel? That's it, okay. Any motions?
Okay, motion to recommend approval of a COA as per the revised drawings as submitted.
I would second. All in favor?
Aye,
Aye.
Okay, 5-0. Okay, so that's that part.
that's done.
So, you've gone through an awful lot with this house, and I think you're, for the first time, we're hearing that you're trying to replicate what was there. It's not in the same materials, but it's in a look. And I was talking about siding, and then there's some verticals, and, there was some kind of framing of some of that stuff. Is that something you're considering as well, or are you just going to simplify that a little bit, or?
I think that we're going to go ahead and we're going to simplify some of the, the finishes. All of these corbels and the details we're going to replicate. The original house, once we removed all of the layers of stucco, there was a great picture, and unfortunately, I'm sorry I didn't bring it, but there was a picture of a house, number 310, that was in a flyer recently that showed the house almost in original clapboard siding, where they would carry almost the window details straight down, and they kind of made it into boxes where the clapboard was and where some of the cedar was. It's a very pretty look, but it was also it looked a little busy to the people that are purchasing the house. We're going to use the same flat stock kind of detail that they were using, but we're going to, instead of having a clapboard and cedar shake mix, it's going to be a straight cedar shake mix. I mean, straight cedar shake throughout.
Okay. And that's, I think it does have a stone foundation for some of it. Is that what it does?
It's stone. It's a stone base foundation. Then it has brick on top of it.
Okay. So there is a baseline that'll be different. It won't go clapboard all the way to, or cedar, or shingle all the way down to the ground.
No, the only part that you see the brick is on this bump out right here. It looked like it might have been like an afterthought where it might have had an overhang at one point where they kind of like dry stacked brick underneath it, maybe to support it at one time, because these are almost cantilevered, and there's also on the driveway side, this here as well is kind of, it almost seems kind of like an afterthought when you're looking at the way that it's constructed. So that's this, throughout this house, all the way along here, there's kind of a base where the brick comes up and then it becomes siding above that. And we're going to do our best to kind of keep it uniform across. The brick is definitely kind of caking and starting to deteriorate. So I'm not exactly sure what we're going to be forced to do just for, taking it watertight.
So it may end up being a stucco or something.
If I can get away from it, I would love to, because what I would also, if it was possible, is on this new part is maybe even using a brick veneer to carry that throughout.
That'd be great.
It would be great if I could do that. If the original parts are not too deteriorated, it might be an expense that just doesn't make sense. And obviously, if the brick sticks too far out, then I have another problem. So,
All right. Well, I'm happy to see that you reacted to what you've uncovered. And, I mean, it was stucco when you got involved, and you just figured, well, we'll just make it stucco, because then that'll match. But as you got into it, you found something else was under there that was vital, and now you're coming back to, let's try to do that, or at least do a variation of that.
well, what's nice is the people that we have engaged with their rebuilding are very interested in staying within the neighborhood there. And when we discussed the original part, when we ran into these first framing issues, that's when I said, I would really have always liked to have done that. That's obviously just a dollar driver there at that point. And they were very interested in going the rest of the way. So we were lucky to do that. We were lucky to have, some good customers that wanted to go that extra mile. Because I think once it's all said and done, even though it's not going to be exactly true to what it originally was, I think it's going to be a beautiful, beautiful renovation when it's all done. And I think it'll fit really nicely in the neighborhood, so.
So if they could move off the vinyl mark, I'd be really happy, but it is what it is.
We tried and tried and tried, and I'm not saying it's a dead issue. We're just trying to balance out. Obviously having a foundation and all the framing that wasn't expected is a large cost. If we hadn't have run into this, there was a very good chance that we could have gone to a real cedar. And I'm not saying that it's a dead issue, but at this point right now, it looks more like we're leaning towards that.
All right.
But I promise for you guys, I'm trying to get to the real cedar.
That'd be great.
So is it mostly a brick foundation down to grade?
Yes, it's a top of grade, and then it's a stacked stone, an 18-inch stacked stone.
Is the rest of the foundation in pretty good shape?
Yes, it's nice, tight. It hasn't effervesced. The back part here was crawl space, where it was a very really sandy, arid, and it just I don't know why when they did these additions, You know, with looking down, I mean, when it was this part here, it looked like there was an addition here, then one that came across, then another one here. And it looked like what they did is they just kind of propped up what was under there. And just
The old rammed earth.
pretty much, it was actually just brick stacked on dirt. There was no real stone found. There was stone under this piece right back here, but it was just pushed right over, so.
All right, well, I appreciate you bringing us up to date, because, there are a lot of eyes on this project. It was pretty simple, then it got to be very interesting because it was getting peeled and some original pieces were being revealed. And everybody was wondering what's going to happen now. And I'm glad to hear you're trying to go back to replicating in some fashion what was there. And, again, we don't have any say about any of that regardless. If you came in and said, I'm going to make that polka dotted, whatever, we wouldn't be able to say anything about it. But we like to hear these stories because that's what we would like to see. And after we vote and say what we can say about things, we always say, well, we would love to see this. And it's always a recommendation.
No, I understand.
So-
And if there was if I had found like a $75,000 pile of cash under the back, I would love to have taken it all the way back to the original, because it was amazing once you peeled the stucco off and saw the original clapboard, especially on the porch. It's just unfortunate that it had about 1 million holes in it, so that by the time you were to try to repair what was there, and it was unfortunate because under all of it was very good shape clapboard siding. It just was in desperate need of paint, and I guess it just was easier to stucco for some particular reason, or maybe when they put the mobile home addition on, that they just carried that stuff. I
Yeah.
can't speak intelligently about what they had done, but
All right, well, I think, anybody else have questions on that? I think that's good. We'll be watching, and, if you feel like calling one of us and saying, hey, I'm going to do this, we'll pass it on.
Great.
We'll pass on information for you, so,
all right. Well, thank you very much for your time this evening.
thank you. Yeah.
Public comment.
Yeah, well, there's public comment as a general. This is a general public comment area. Does anybody want to say anything? Thanks. I think we have one.
Sorry.
Just briefly, Greg Pritchard, and this project, I appreciate what the builder's trying to do. This house was, as we all know, a wreck for a long time, and it's really great that it's going to be fixed up again. But it does bring up some interesting questions for this board and for the, I think, the strength of the ordinances. When the builder first came before you, the assumption was that the house had always been stuccoed, I think, and there really wasn't any evidence to say anything otherwise. But once, as we said, the layers were peeled back, we saw that it wasn't just original siding, it was original details, the grid pattern of stick-style architecture, which, one of the great things about North Wayne is that it encompasses so many different styles of architecture. And there were about 10 of these little cottages built along North Wayne Avenue. They were the first houses in all of North Wayne. And they all had the same style. And actually on West Wayne Avenue, there are some very similar houses, a little bit larger, that have the same grid pattern with the scallop shingles and the upper part of the gables and so forth. So what was removed essentially was, in my view, character-defining feature, and even though it had been covered up, it was revealed, and thus the historic fabric remained. Now, I'm not sure, if precedent, for 40, 60, 80, who knows how many years, that stucco layer had been visible on top. And it's an interesting question. Where does the assessment of historic fabric, of architectural details begin and end? Which, layers does it encompass? So that's one question I think we have to consider. And when working in historic districts, like I said, North Wayne is remarkable for its unique architecture and varied styles, and that's part of the reason it became a nationally registered historic district. And you know, we've seen a number of examples of shingles and, you know, asbestos siding being removed on, I think a couple examples on Walnut Avenue, and revealing original siding, and it was all, for the most part, repaired and patched up, and they're just great examples that really contribute to the overall fabric of the neighborhood today. So, you know, where this goes, you know, the look of cedar siding, even if it's not cedar siding, is definitely a different architectural style from the way this house originally was, and or, you know, what it was a couple weeks ago when the stucco was removed as well. And you know, it's more than just about the, you know, what siding to use, you know, vinyl versus, you know, materials. It's about architectural integrity and style, and I believe, at least in my view, that's within the HARB's purview to assess. So. Thank you.
I just was going to comment on your comment. It just sounds, I think, very accurate that fabric alterations are definitely within the purview of many, many other HARBs ordinances, and ours is lacking that potential right now, but it's an issue that we should all consider, is what I think you're getting at.
Yeah, the other thing we're talking about internally in the township also is discovery. You know, when you get to that point where you do find that, what does that do?
It's the process.
And there isn't an answer yet. You're in midstream, you know, an owner's carrying a property, a builder's on site. You know, it's not like an architectural dig where you stop work and, you know, a team comes in. At least here, it is not like that. So I don't think we have those tools in our hands yet to decide how that's going to work. But we're asking the questions, just like you're asking the questions, because, you know, we're going to find more and more of this as people start uncovering these houses.
And yeah, and I suspect those 10 other cottages on North Wayne Avenue, they have asbestos siding and all sorts of things, and I really think some of that detailing might be there as well, remaining. So it's an interesting question, one we have to think about. And again, I appreciate the builders and what they're doing, and they very kindly let me take some samples from the site of original fabric, so do some paint analysis and things like that. So
Excellent.
yeah, but
All right, thanks, Greg. All right, I think we've come to the end of our evening. All in favor of an adjournment?
Aye.
Aye. I think we're adjourned.